he's come up with what must surely be the absolute genius approach to politics, announcing that you're lifting bans on things that weren't banned. So I'm lifting a tax on meat. There is no tax on meat. Yeah, that's because I lifted it. You see, you can't touch him, can you? Rishi Sunak announced yesterday that there will be no tax on meat thanks to him. And you say, because you are intelligent and informed and moderately educated, you say, well, hang on a minute, there is no tax on meat. There was never going to be a tax on meat. He said, that's because I banned it. You see? I banned it, so you can't... Yes! Bin your way out of that, Starmer. He's also banned the 7 bins that you currently have to use to do your recycling. I know what you're thinking. You don't have 7 bins to do your recycling. And even if you did, you'd probably want to know why and what purpose it serves and why. No, doesn't matter. I've banned 7 bins. The 7-bin recycling rule is now over thanks to me, Rishi 7-bin Sunak. But there was no requirement to have. Doesn't matter. I banned it. What else is he going to ban? I've heard, and listen, my sources are not great. This is something that, you should probably turn to a slightly better connected political commentator than me. But I am told that he is about to ban glass hammers, organic elbow grease, and long weights. I don't know if you've ever spent any time at all on a building site, but if you have and you were young, you were probably sent to the hardware store, to the supplier, to pick up some tartan paint and a box of long weights. He's banning all of those. No long weights under Rishi 7-bin Sunak and no more tartan paint. Glass hammers under Rishi 7-bin Sunak will soon be a thing of the past. Do you know what else he's banning? Compulsory car sharing. God, that is a relief. I tell you what, the sooner he bans compulsory car sharing, the better. I had to come in again today with Dirty Gertie from number 30. And honestly, I know she means well, but my goodness me, she could talk the hind legs off a donkey. All I want to do on the way into work is put on the 30th anniversary release of De La Soul's classic album that dropped this morning, sit back and just chill a bit, get ready to decide what we're going to talk about together. But Dirty Gertie from number 30's in the back of the car, giving it this and giving it that. The sooner compulsory car sharing disappears, the better for all of us. What else has he banned? New taxes to discourage flying. Pardon? And also expensive insulation upgrades. Well, insulation is good. It's almost as if he's forgotten the energy crisis, isn't it? One of the reasons why the energy crisis had a scant silver lining, or has a scant silver lining, because it arrived in conjunction with the war in Ukraine. And it reminded us how dependent we are upon natural gas coming out of Russia. So the idea of trying to wean the country off gas was both, tactically and logistically clever, but also, of course, financially, because heat pumps and other more sustainable heat sources will bring down fuel bills by a country mile. So he's gone in the opposite direction on that. Listen, I don't think I'm going to annoy everybody today. I try not to, not everybody. But you might be cross with me for not taking this as seriously as I should. And I get that. It is pretty tragic, isn't it, for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who not only campaigned in 2019 on the pledges that he abandoned yesterday, but also, of course, signed off on them and as Chancellor of the Exchequer, signed off on the finances as Chancellor of the Exchequer, and as recently as July was swearing blind that he wasn't going to flip-flop at all. But it doesn't matter. There's a beautiful morning in many ways. The relationship between the Conservative Party and client media is never clearer than on a morning like this. So what you have is a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, a leader of the Conservative Party, who in July swore blind he wouldn't do what he did yesterday, who as Chancellor signed off on the finances of what he claimed yesterday couldn't be afforded or was too expensive, and who also as Chancellor, I think, also as Chancellor, campaigned in 2019, maybe not as, anyway, certainly as a Conservative MP, campaigned in 2019 on a manifesto that pledged to deliver all of the things that he pledged not to deliver yesterday. So by any objective measure, what happened yesterday in terms of politics was despicable, right? Regardless of what you think you know about net zero, if you campaign on a manifesto promising X, if you sign off as Chancellor on the affordability of X, and if you swear blind in July of this year that we would definitely, come hell or high water, be sticking with X, and then you turn around to yesterday today and say you're abandoning X because you can't afford it, it's a very bad idea, and you're doing it to look after all the poor people, then in a normal universe, any honest journalist would be queuing up to criticise you, right? Again, I'd say, regardless of what you think about net, or you think you know about net zero, which is probably not as much as, well, we should, is it? Skyhook's also being banned under Rishi Sunak's glorious rule. I'm happy to confirm that. Just a rumour coming in from Hertfordshire. And that's the point, isn't it? That's how broken we are now. Let me show you. I mean, you won't even believe the front page of The Sun, which says, Rishi delays bans on new cars and boilers. So, I mean, here is the thing, right? Nobody was going to have to buy a new car unless they needed to buy a new car. That seems to have been missed. We'll have a look at the politics of it in a minute. And he's also scrapping a meat tax. So the front page of the Sun newspaper, which is not the best selling in the country and is not the force that it was, but it's still, in many ways, the Sun and the Mail and the Telegraph are the pipers to whose tune Rishi Sunak is dancing today. They're actually telling their readers on the front page that he's scrapped a meat tax. He hasn't scrapped a meat tax. That's how pathetic this all is. And then, of course, you look at the bits that everybody is supposed to be celebrating, because as of today, the people that encouraged you to turn Britain into the first country in history to impose economic sanctions on itself, the people who told you that austerity was not only a brilliant idea, but that it was necessitated by the fact that there are too many libraries in Wolverhampton. Thank you, Alexei Sale. The story today that they won't be telling you about involves £15 billion worth of council assets being sold off by 2010. That's libraries, playing fields, community centres, youth clubs, swimming pools, sold off since 2010 when austerity started, because councils need to plug holes in the budgets that have been cut by the government that today is telling you that they are reversing their net zero policies because they're worried about poor people. The absolutely ridiculous Kemi Badenoch touring studios this morning, claiming that Zach Goldsmith, who wins the Stop Clock is Right Twice a Day award for 2023, Zach Goldsmith doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to net zero because he's so rich. But Rishi Sunak, who is richer, he definitely does. So you can't bring the personal wealth of a politician into a critique of their net zero attitude unless it's relevant to all politicians. So Zach Goldsmith, who I think is an absolute flump for the record and quite spectacularly rewarded for failure by Boris Johnson, is right about this. But he's not, because he's so rich. Rishi Sunak, who agreed with Zach Goldsmith last week, and last month and last year, and when they campaigned together in 2019 as senior Tories, he's wrong about this until he changes his mind, at which point he's right, and the fact that he's very rich doesn't matter at all. There's like a conveyor belt somewhere, isn't there? Because you sort of, Priti Patel drops off the edge of it. Do you remember in the Generation Game? You'd sit there, you'd watch the thing. So you'd think Priti Patel's a tease maid. She's just gone past. Here comes the cuddly toy. There's another one. Who's Kemi? Where did she come from? Oliver Dowden? What's it? It's like a conveyor belt of spectacularly incompetent people who continue to be rewarded because they continue to peddle the nonsenses upon which the last... Bear with me. The last 4 Conservative governments have been built on absolute nonsense. And because it's 12 minutes after 10 and I haven't really brought Brexit into things yet, the reason why they continue to do this is what was on display yesterday. It doesn't matter what's true anymore. It doesn't matter what's real. It doesn't matter what is, what's the word that I'm looking for? It doesn't matter what is evidence-based. They have persuaded themselves, quite rightly, that people will believe anything in a country where the nonsense is being punted by politicians who enjoy the sycophantic support of most of the media. And of course, the media that doesn't support them still invites the vampires and shills from the fossil fuel funded so-called think tanks onto their programmes as valid contributors to the debate. So the pool of conversation has been so completely corrupted that they think they can persuade, they think there are votes in this because they think they can persuade you that Labour is going to force you to sell your old car and buy a new one, or force you to scrap your perfectly functional boiler and install a new one. And of course they're not. That's the most interesting thing about what the weird political moment in which we find ourselves. I don't think this is going to move the polls at all, by the way, and nor do the polls, actually. The new net zero plan is unlikely to win back many wavering Conservative voters, according to polling and focus group that Downing Street has already seen. It's more than 4,000 people interview with voters looking at wavering Tory voters. And it might sway one, but there's more over there who won't be swayed at all. Snap polling carried out by YouGov suggests it's going to be popular with current supporters of the party, and of course it will be popular with wealth. But why has he done it? 40 minutes after 10. I'll tell you why he's done it. And why has he done it at such short notice? And why has he done it days after pledging that he wouldn't do it? And why has he done it in direct contradiction of the manifesto on which he campaigned in 2019 or the financial forecast that he signed off as Chancellor even more recently? He's done it partly because none of that matters in a corrupted country with a corrupt media. If the truth is not being properly reported. Oh, here's a very rich Tory to tell me why he loves this idea because he thinks it's going to be good for poor people. How do you feel about taxes going up to help poor people? No, absolutely not. No, not at all. No, deeply opposed to that. How do you feel about austerity, screwing poor people left, right and centre for the last 13 years? Yeah, necessary evil, John. So, I mean, tough business. Too many libraries in Wolverhampton. It's very, very, very bad. How do you feel about the cost of living crisis? Well, I don't really have a view on that. I'm very, very rich. Thank you for inviting me onto your show, by the way. I used to be treasurer of the Tory party, And how do you feel about these new net zero policies? Oh, they're absolutely brilliant. What you've got to remember is they're really going to help poor people, and we really care. We really care about poor people on my side of politics, except when it comes to austerity, Brexit, taxes, pay, wages, cost of living, income, and actual assets and amenities that ordinary people can use because they are provided by the councils that we have come close to bankrupting over the course of the last 13 years. But up with net zero. Great for poor people. How did you vote on Brexit? Oh, Brexit all the way. Yeah, John. Yeah, I love Brexit. It's great. Any benefits? Anyway, time for the travel. It's 16 minutes after 10, and what I want you to tell me, seriously, is from the point of view of people in the actual business, right? So it's a 5-year delay. What difference is it going to make? But the point that people don't really understand is that nobody was going to have to buy a new car unless they needed a new car, right? Nobody was going to have to buy a new boiler unless they needed a new boiler. And the people who were going to be compelled to replace their old knackered boiler with a heat pump were going to get £5,000 help already. The costs of that kind of technology are going to come plummeting down as it becomes more popular. But of course, even though it may be a little bit more expensive than a gas or an oil-based boiler, the fuel bills will come down commensurately as well. The one good thing in yesterday's announcement was an actual 50% increase in the size of the subsidy that you'll get if you need to replace your gas boiler with a heat pump, which I think has gone up from a maximum of £5,000 to £7,500. So in the detail, even they recognise the necessity of doing this. They've just announced a delay, which I am going to cautiously suggest, 10:17 is the time, doesn't really touch the sides of anybody's lived experience. 0345 6060 973. You can talk about the politics of it, but unless you're a landlord who really didn't want to help their tenants bring their fuel bills down by improving the insulation in the property, I can't see who really should be popping the corks today. Unless you're a landlord or a fossil fuel investor, unless you're making a lot of money out of fossil fuel shares, or you have got a bunch of properties or a couple of properties that are quite run down and you didn't want to be compelled to insulate them because that's not going to help you at all. All it's going to do is bring down the fuel bills for your tenants. Who is supposed to be celebrating today? 0345 6060 973 is question number one. Who is supposed to be celebrating today? It's a genuine question because my feeling is that they think this is going to be like you, Les. And I don't think it is like ULEZ, because although there was loads and loads and loads of misinformation surrounding ULEZ, and lots of people in Uxbridge believed that they were going to have to get rid of their cars when they weren't. People weren't checking whether they were compliant or not. All sorts of miscomprehensions out there. The political power of saying to someone, you are this party, even though the Labour Party nationally had sort of managed to detach itself, and certainly has since, from Sadiq Khan's policy, saying to someone, this lot are going to make you sell your car, right? That is powerfully political. It is politically powerful. It's Horlicks. It's not true. And even if it were true, the amount of help you're going to get to replace your car is considerable. It doesn't matter. There's something, we talked about this yesterday, the psychology of saying to somebody, they are coming for your car, right? They are coming for your car. That really worked. And that just saved the Tories' bacon in Uxbridge and Isleworth. And that is the only good news the Tories have had since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. Don't forget that. It's really important. The single tiny nugget of good news that the Conservative Party has had electorally since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister was a catastrophic loss of support in Uxbridge and Isleworth that wasn't quite catastrophic enough to see them lose the seat. They would have lost it if everyone who voted Green had voted Labour. But it was the best result that Rishi Sunak has delivered to his party since he became Prime Minister. And it was, by most objective measures, still a catastrophic result, but not quite catastrophic enough to lose the seat. And everybody agrees, from all parties and all political persuasions, that the reason they got away with it was because the ULEZ rhetoric was so effective. Telling people that Labour were going to take their cars away worked. Doesn't matter whether it's true or not. This is Brexit Britain. The days of policies or promises or pledges or claims having to be true, they're still a long way over the horizon. So telling them that we're going to take your car away, and they're trying to turn the micro into the macro. They're trying to increase the fear of them coming along and taking something away. The truth of the policy, both before and after the delay, is that nobody needs to buy a new car unless they need to buy a new car, and nobody needs to install a new boiler unless they need to install a new boiler. But they think there's politics and political gain in telling you that, well, you're going to have to buy one and we've delayed it now, and the other lot probably won't.